Hi, this is Jen Rubin, editor-in-chief of The Contrarian. I am so honored to have with us Tom Sherwood. And Tom Sherwood, as we were just discussing, has been the dean of Washington journalists and Washington, D.C. journalists, the city of Washington, D.C., for decades. He has been a familiar face on radio, on television. He is currently the political analyst for a critical political show in Washington on public radio on Friday. Tom Sherwood, welcome. It's great to see you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sorry my resume is so long.
Yes, it is. Well, that is the benefit and the downside of having such a distinguished career. So let's talk about this political invasion and military invasion of the district. Some basic facts, first of all. Crime is down considerably in the district. In fact, it's at a 30-year low. Is there any factual basis for what the president has said and any emergency on the crime front that you've discerned?
Well, the crime statistics are better. They were very bad in 2023, but in 2024 and through 2025, they are much lower. Homicide has been a problem in this city for many years, but it's far less than the 400, 500 murders back in the early 1990s. So this is an unprecedented action by President Trump. He has authority under the Constitution to take temporary control of the DC Police Department. That authority's been in place since the early 1970s. This is the first president to even try to do it.
And you're referring to the home rule bill, and this is an important thing for people to understand. The Constitution is sort of vague about the district, and it kind of came through a series
Well,
of
I don't know if it's
legislations.
vague or not. The Constitution says that I'll just read the exact words. The Article 1, Section 1, Article 1, Section 8 says that the Congress shall have, quote, exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever in the district. They want to put a Ferris wheel in the National Mall, we'll get a Ferris wheel.
Absolutely. And it's Congress, interestingly, that does have that authority.
Yeah.
Under the Home Rule Bill, which came about in the 70s, we got local rule. In other words, we have a mayor, we have a city council, but Congress retains a huge amount of authority over budget, over legislation. They exercise a kind of veto power. But in terms
100% oversight, 100%
yes.
oversight.
And unlike other actual states, the National Guard is under the president's control. And that's what he's done here. Talk a little bit about what authority the president has over the National Guard. And this does seem to put to bed the lie that he didn't have power over the National Guard on January 6th. Apparently he does. And in fact, he has really plenary power over the Guard.
Yes, the short answer is the Constitution of the United States gives the Congress total legislative authority over the district. And the Home Rule Act, which it passed in 1973, and there was some concern about whether these people in the district could run themselves. There was a provision tacked on at the very end that said in case of any emergency, the President of the United States can take over the Metropolitan Police Department, the city's police department, temporarily for 48 hours and up to 30 days, unless Congress gives him further approval to stay in charge. And under the city's law, the president is authorized to call out the National Guard, not the mayor. And so the president traditionally has had this authority. The president has designated it to the Department of Defense secretary, who has designated it to the Army secretary, and it is the Army secretary who didn't call out the National Guard on January the 6th. We're talking about a unique place in America. Washington, D.C. is the nation's capital, but it is the most un-American place in America. We don't have senators. We have one delegate who's only a delegate, not a member of the House. She can only vote in certain circumstances. And we have only been able to vote for president in this city since 1964. We are a product of the federal government.
Absolutely. And this, in some ways, is the best argument for home rule, that the residents of DC don't have the control that residents of an actual state does. The mayor is not a governor, and the president has chosen. We can argue about the legality of it all and the propriety, but he's able to do that because we're not a state. And how do you think this is going to affect kind of the conversation around DC statehood? And do you think in our lifetimes we're ever going to see DC statehood?
I am for, but I'm not optimistic about statehood for the District of Columbia. I do
Right.
believe that the most Americans in this country don't know who we are, that we're a city of 700,000 people, most of whom do not have anything to do with the federal government. They simply live and work here. So I don't think the country understands what the district is. It's more likely, unfortunately, is that the very conservative Congress, run by Republicans, if they maintain control in the 26 elections and they decide they want to do even more to the district, they could abolish home rule and go back to the old system of government here that ran the city for 100 years. And that was the president appointed 3 commissioners to run the city. And so some
Abs-
Republicans in Congress want that. Now that's a long way off, but statehood is even farther off.
Fair enough. The president has also deployed FBI agents who normally don't do street patrols, and the
Nor do
National
they want to
Guard,
do it. Nor
and
do
they
they
don't
want
want
to
to
do
do
it.
it. And the
I know a lot
National
of them. They don't
Guard
want to do this.
And the National Guard is not a ordinary police force. Sometimes in cases, for example, in 68, when there were huge riots, National Guard came in, but they're not in the policing business either. How do you see this working? Do you think there'll be a distraction? Do you think there'll just kind of be atmosphere in the background? How do you see all of these federal law enforcement interacting with the DC police who know DC and police it on a daily basis?
There's already confusion. The Now the Secretary of Defense, Mr. Hegseth, told Fox News this week that the National Guardsmen will not be armed. You know, National Guards people are just basically citizens, men and women who go about their normal lives. They meet maybe once a month. They're around in case there's an emergency. They do not have police powers. They don't have police training. So putting them in an urban environment where they're just going to walk around, and if they see something, they have to call the police. And a lot of people believe all of this was triggered by this one incident a couple of weeks ago when a former member of the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, was
Right.
interrupted a carjacking. Well, you know, people forget or don't know this young man was 3 o'clock in the morning. He tried to interrupt a carjacking and he was being beaten up. And guess what? DC police officers came by and stopped him. Police were
Yeah.
actually on the street patrolling for crime in that neighborhood. And so we don't know exactly what's going to happen here. The, the police chief, Pamela Smith, is still in charge of the police department, but Trump's administration has put Tom Cole over the police department. Tom Cole is the administrator of the Drug Enforcement Agency. He has no policing experience in the District of Columbia. So the mayor yesterday in a press conference was trying to say, how is this all going to work out? Who's in charge? Who gets to make the decisions? The mayor was trying to say, well, it's forced on us a partnership and we'll work with them. But from the Trump side, it sounds like they're going to make the decisions. As of this moment, we don't know how it's going to play out. We don't know how many National Guardsmen. We're told about 200 a day will be on the streets. 800 are going to be called up. And we don't know exactly how the police are going to work together. We have 3,200 police officers. And so if you've got FBI agents out wandering around, you've got DEA agents and alcohol and firearm tobacco agents walking around, who's in charge? We have to wait to see what happens here.
And that I think is an absolute critical point. The worst thing is that people don't know who is doing what, and that there's confusion, and the public doesn't know who's doing what. How do you see this playing out? After 30 days, the president's power to hold at least the Metropolitan Police Department, expires. Do you expect this to change anything in terms of the crime or the actual policing that goes on in DC? These people don't seem to be the right kind of people if you did want to bolster the police department.
This, many people in the District of Columbia and a lot of the national media covering the story have said this appears to be a political act on the part of the president. Some distraction from all the other things that are going on. Just this morning, the consumer price index shows that inflation, once again, is ticking up after the third month. That's not what the president wants. He's got this intractable Russia, Ukraine thing. He's going to Alaska. I hope he knows it's Alaska, not Russia, that he's going to meet with Putin about that. He's been unable to get Israel to do something different in Gaza. It's a lot of things going on in the economy and the tariff thing, the yin yang yo-yoing of the tariffs. He's just postponed the China tariffs for 90 more days while more talk. There's just so much going on nationally. You wonder, why did the president turn and focus on the district where crime has been going on for 2 years? Well, it's so odd. Most people have not realized this. On May the 7th, the president had another news conference just 90 days ago, and he praised the District of Columbia for crime going down 25%. And so did the FBI director, Mr. Patel. He said it was historic, the turnaround in crime. So this was just 90 days ago, and the weather vane mentality of the president spinning around all these different issues, suddenly he decides to take over the District of Columbia. We are an easy target. Back in the 60s and 70s, George Wallace and Richard Nixon attacked this city, talked about putting a cop on every corner, and every president since then has expressed concern about crime. But the fact is, the district is a pretty well-run place. And we'll get to the mayor, if you like, in just a moment. But we're a real city. People once asked me, asked some tourists when I was interviewing them about the city, and they said, "But you work for us." I said, "What do you mean?" They thought me, a TV reporter, worked for the federal government. So there's a great deal of knowledge not about the city. There's people just don't know. Thousands of young people come here for their school trips every spring. They're making those plans right now. You've got the president of the United States telling businesses and people and school groups, hey, this is a dangerous place. Maybe you shouldn't come. What the mayor hasn't said, and we'll get to her, the NFL, one of the largest, biggest sports entities in the world, has decided, and the city has approved it moving back to the RFK site here in Washington, D.C. It is a tremendous business again. $6 billion company and a multi-billion-dollar NFL agency going to be back in the heart of the city, just east of Capitol Hill. That's a positive thing. That happened just 10 days ago, and now we're talking about crime in exaggerated terms because one person, the president of the United States, spoke up.
Wow, that is an absolute, really blistering insight. And that's why we have you here, Tom. Let's end on the mayor. She is in a pickle because she's dependent upon funding. People of DC obviously are outraged. She's tried to kind of thread a needle. What do you think of her response? And do you think she's going to be able to maintain this equilibrium as Trump ratchets up the anti-DC propaganda machine?
She's trying to maintain stability. She has publicly said, as Trump, all during the presidential campaign last year, Trump threatened to take over the District of Columbia government, said he could run it better than anybody, which is a common theme, what he says about anything. And so he constantly attacked the city. She met with him after he was elected. They went over the crime stats, which he always talks about, that and homelessness and graffiti. She's taken extraordinary steps to reduce the homeless population, to get them off the street. She's done a lot more to do graffiti work. And so she's trying to run the city. She's about to announce her reelection bid for a fourth term. She's no new person around the block here. She doesn't, back in 2020, during the George Floyd riots, she criticized the president. She put up the Black Lives Matter Plaza on 16th Street across from the Lafayette Park, right next to the White House. And she was aggressive then. But Trump has taken such a bad turn in the second time, this retribution time in office. She doesn't want to poke him. And most of the council members have been pretty quiet until now. She says she will work with this federal authority. She'll do what she can, but she doesn't see it as a takeover. She says we will work with this authority, but we don't know how it's going to work either.
Right.
So
Well,
she's in a difficult position. You know, she ran the city through COVID, like many governors and mayors. She's generally credited with a good job there. She's brought the NFL team back, which has been a 15-year effort by previous mayors. The city has had, the District of Columbia, people think of it like wasteful Washington. The District of Columbia has had balanced budgets for 30 years. Unlike Congress up the street from me, the district by law has to balance its budget, and it has. So there's a lot of good things the mayor's going to do running for mayor. There'll be a couple of people who challenge her, and how she handles this federal intrusion into home rule will play a big part in the election. If it lasts, it could be like Los Angeles, where 4,000 National Guardsmen went in and some Marine Corps people. They all stood around looking at each other. And then over the couple of weeks, they all filtered back to their regular jobs. And we don't hear about the National Guard in LA anymore. The president, though, has unique authority here. The mayor's trying to balance it with running the city and not letting Trump's mistaken view of crime overrun what we're doing here in the district.
well, it is a fascinating situation. There is a tension there. The Attorney General of Washington, D.C. has been much more aggressive, at least in rhetoric, and the population of DC.
That's important. Attorney General Brian Schwab, who is also elected in the city, up for re-election next year, he's been quite clear. He thinks this is an overreach, it's unnecessary and unauthorized. Although the mayor and some of the lawyers that I know say this provision in the Constitution and the Home Rule Act of 73 does give the president wide latitude. And while the attorney general may sue about this, as in any number of cases we've seen in this term, the president will just go merrily along and let the courts decide that he shouldn't have done something. He's not waiting for approval.
Well, we are going to see how this plays out. We're going to see how the city of DC reacts. I imagine there'll be some public protests, but I also imagine it will be peaceful.
Some people out in the streets. The council's starting to speak up. There are some public demonstrations in the streets, but the power structure of the city, the business community, the labor community, all of those, this is not something where they're going to pour into the streets to oppose President Trump. That would be just what he wants. Trump would love to see the people of Washington standing outside defending crime rates. He doesn't, the people in the city don't want that. We'll see what legally can happen, but I'm predicting not much legally will happen.
Well, it will be fascinating.
Yeah, this will fade away like every other thing the weather vane president does.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for being with us. We came to the right source, and I'm sure in your decades, you've seen it all, but maybe not this. There's always something new.
In 60 years, this is the most unsettling time where I have trouble figuring out what's going to happen next. 60 years of journalism, and this is the first time since Barry Goldwater and Lyndon Johnson in 1964, I've covered some kind of presidential politics. This is the weirdest time in my life.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for all you do, and thank you for all you've done for DC over the decades. We will be following you as we go through this. So thanks so much. Pleasure having you.